What's up, boys? Welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be having a look at a recently played game between Serral and Showtime from Home Story Cup 20, which was a best of 2 format. So this is one of the 2 games. I believe this was the first game, but I'm not entirely sure. And we're just going to be going over it, just checking out to see where the players made mistakes. So it's not so much a cast, but a little bit of a analysis slash cast. So in the top left, spawning as the red Zerg is Serral, and bottom right, blue Protoss is Showtime, the German Zerg. Now, both of them are known to be basically extreme macro players. Like, they'll occasionally play an all-in, but their default mode is macro, obviously. Both of them are big fans of longer games, and this game is a rather long one, so let's hop straight into it. We just see a standard gate gas opener, and from Serral we see just a hatch first, so nothing crazy going on here. Now on this map, as a Protoss, you do have to pay attention to this ramp, which is extremely big, requires 4 force fields to basically close off, which is bigger than on any other map. And you have this big area between your natural and your third, which is hard to defend. You kind of have to build a pylon here and maybe batteries here in case some kind of roach all in. There's some good areas for Nydus over here, some good areas for Nydus here in case of roach Nydus swarm host, of course. Not a lot of dead space either behind the bases, so you can't really fly by with oracles, which makes it very hard to do damage with oracles. So in general, I'm not a massive fan of this map as a Protoss player, but we'll see how Showtime does. He's putting on some harassment with the probes, basically just right-clicking on the minerals very quickly, and then pressing the stop command with S, and then right-clicking again, stop command, trying to, if you do it quicker than your opponent, then your opponent can't mine there because you're constantly occupying the mineral patch. So that's basically what he was doing. Leaves the base as around 210, 212. That's usually when the links start popping. Now, Serral has extremely good link movement, and I kind of want to show that off here. So he has one Overlord in the middle of the map, and this is to check if the Adept Shade is coming already. Now, doesn't see an Adept Shade, doesn't see anything here. Actually, scouts the Stargate with his initial Overlord, and he moves one Ling around. Now, if there's only a single Chrono Boost on the gateway, this means that the second Adept will pop at around the 3-minute mark. If there is an Chrono Boost on the second gateway unit, then it means he'll pop around 250-ish, so a couple of seconds earlier, which you have to keep in mind. Now, Showtime manages to find this Ling. Serral won't be too heartbroken because he already got the information he needed with the Overlord. Now he's gonna go poke back in, try and figure out what the first unit is. So he wants to know, hey, is this a Phoenix coming out of here, or is it gonna be an Oracle? So Serral, of course, knowing the timing when the Stargate finishes, scouts and sees that the animation of the Oracle is playing, and thus knows, hey, that's an Oracle opener, and he will need to get a faster Spore, either in the main or in the natural, and a double Queen defense on the other base is what he'll do most likely. Showtime does move back with his first Adept as speed is about to finish. You see Serral gets his speed around 330, which is a relatively early speed. I've seen later speeds in my time, 240, 245. It's all doable, but very quick speed here for Serral at 230. Sends a Ling around the map, will be chilling at the third base of Showtime, just making sure that a single probe won't be able to take that. Now, first Oracle flies across the map, and like I said, after Serral scouted that Stargate, that Oracle, he managed to time the Spore absolutely perfect. Oracle flies in, Spore is done, 2 Queens in the natural, third Queen about to finish, so this should get a drone maximum, but most of the time it doesn't even get that. Now, as a follow-up, we see Showtime actually get a Phoenix, which is interesting, because most of the time you'll see Phoenix before Oracle, but he actually did opt for the other way around, and I can't see the Overlord anymore that was originally here. Maybe Serral sent it back, and maybe it died. I'm not sure what happened with that. I'm just looking for it, but this Phoenix didn't kill it as it doesn't have any kill, so very curious what happened with that bad boy. Now, if we take a look at Showtime's base, we see 3 gates, which means he wants to be a bit more aggressive with Adepts. Usually you go 2 gate, you expand, you get your robo, and you go into a longer macro game. If you get a 3rd gate, it means you want to warp in 1 extra adept and move out with 6 or 5 adepts across the map, while you're doing damage with your 2 Oracle Phoenix or with 3 Oracles without a Phoenix. In this case he has a Phoenix, so it's going to be Phoenix to Oracle and 6 adepts together. Serral does spot it immediately with a Ling, so he will be completely aware of that. Showtime decides to go around rather than go through the middle to try and remain a little bit mysterious as to what he's doing exactly, but Serral being Serral gets a bunch of Links out. Actually he's a little bit too aggressive with these, should be at home, but I guess the trick did work kind of. It's nice to see here for Showtime. So these 6 adepts will be shading probably into the 3rd base. Yeah, there we go. Oracle's trying to do some damage, didn't get a single worker kill yet. Serral with his little Ling move did manage to deny a 3rd base, but these adepts are kind of dangerous at the moment. They're already forcing a full drone pool, killed 4 workers with it as well. 3rd base goes down, as well as the robotics facility behind this. These adept shades are not brilliant, they're not too bad. Like he's basically doing what he's supposed to do. And what this also does is it pulls all the queens towards this base. So right now there's 5 queens in this area at the 3rd. And there's not a single queen in the main. Which means if you have 3 oracles and a phoenix against a single spore, that's a fight that you can definitely take, right? You can just target down drones, and I would love if he would have just gone in immediately and just start targeting down these drones. Like there's nothing to be afraid of if there's no queens yet. I really think he could have gotten maybe 9 to 10 workers here with these 3 oracles on top of the initial 4 workers he got with the adepts. He does end up losing 3 adepts, but 10 workers in total, it's not too bad. You see the worker count is kind of close, which is rare in this stage of the game. Showtime already has 4 sentries, is getting an immortal, and he follows up with a Forge and a Twilight. So 3 gate into Forge Twilight, and we'll be going into a more standard macro game. But I have to admit, I admire Showtime's ability to keep these 4 air units alive. He has a little bit of damage on this one, doesn't have too much energy on it either. But the other 3 units are in perfect health. Serral doesn't have a 4th base yet. Now this is a bit of a clue for Showtime that something aggressive is about to happen, right? The usual timing for a Zerg 3rd base is around 5:20, 5:30. Maybe if there's a little bit of pressure, 5:40, 5:50 the latest. But if at 6 minutes at the highest level of play you don't see a 4th base yet, you gotta know, hey wait, something's going on. He's gonna stop at around 66 workers, because after that there won't be a base to saturate. So at this point Showtime should be thinking, hey, what could it be? Could it be a Roach all-in? Could it be a Hydra all-in? Or is it gonna be Swarm Host? And in this case it's gonna be Roach Swarm Host, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a Nydus being thrown down with this as well. We have a couple of sentries for Showtime. He is taking the gases rather early, only after 4 gates. So usually if your opponent is playing more aggressive, what you want to do is you want to get more gates before you take the gases. So Showtime perhaps not completely realizing what is up. It's actually going only up to 4 gates before taking these gases. I would have preferred seeing maybe a couple of extra gates, so you have some more map control, you have some more power in your army in case you get all-in. Easier to deny Nydus in case of Infestation Pit, and in case of Swarmhouse Nydus. 4th base will go down eventually for Serral. And this is a funny move as well, by the way, by Showtime. So this kind of move, it usually forces out units pre-75 drones. So what you want to do as a Protoss, you want to force out units before the Zerg gets to 75 or 78 or 83 drones, whatever drone count they want. So you make a move out to force out these extra units so that he can't saturate his 4th base. However, there's no 4th base. And Showtime is aware of this, so this push is doing absolutely nothing except just expose himself to the risk of getting surrounded and killed by these units. Now, he does have the oracles in his army, so he probably won't lose anything here, but this move out is completely useless. It achieved absolutely nothing. Well, it forced some units, and I guess it does confirm to Showtime that a lot of units are being made, but he could have known that just purely by the lack of the 4th base or by checking what's popping from the axe. And I'm not actually sure if he's aware. Yeah, he sees the Infestation Pit and he also saw the Nydus, so he should be aware of what's happening and he should be starting to spread units. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Void Ray either starting soon. I usually like to build one of those. I'm not sure how the other tosses feel about them, but I definitely am a big fan of a Void Ray. Can really cover some ground when it comes to Swarmhouse Nydus. Now, if you take a look at Showtime's vision, he has good vision on the right side of the map. He has good vision here as well. 3 Zealots will find this initial Nydus that Serral is putting down. A couple of Roaches and Ravagers will be trying to secure a spot for that Nydus, but if these Roaches and Ravagers get found by the Oracles, these 3 Ravagers are completely dead and completely for free as well. Like, there's absolutely no way these boys survive. Even versus the main army, they have a very small chance of surviving. I'm not a massive fan of using all 3 Oracles to kill this Nydus, but I much rather would have seen him go for this little army and then send a couple of Zealots here. You know, the army on the map isn't as big, but so far Showtime's doing an absolutely fantastic job dealing with these Nyduses, I'll have to admit. Not a single Nydus managed to get up yet, and Serral is droning up his fort base now. He's going up to 8 gas, so he's transitioning away from the Swarmhost. He only has 11 Swarmhosts as well. This is not by no means an all-in. He's not rushing into Brood Lords behind this either. It's just some pressure with the Swarmhost, keep some pressure on his opponent. Oh, this is a terrible move command by Showtime. Loses 2 Immortals for free, does get 3 Queens, but he also exposes himself against these Roaches, so this trade won't be too great for him either. So these were 2 trades that just weren't very good for him. Might even lose another Archon, no, barely doesn't, but 2 more Archons very low. This was a really bad trade, and like I said, he opens himself up for some harassment, and on top of that, Serral's frankly winning a lot of time here. He's getting up to Hydras, he's getting up to Lurkers as well, and once those Lurkers are out, it becomes really difficult for Showtime to move across the map and put on some pressure on his opponent. He still is very aware of all the Nyduses on the map. This push should do absolutely nothing. I'm glad that Showtime realizes that and he's going back. Meanwhile, everything that Serral strong at Showtime did get cleaned up, so supplies are very even. However, the tech for Showtime is looking a little bit bleak at this point. There's no Storm yet, there's no Blink, there's no Fort Base, there's no Fleet Beacon either. And it's very hard to break a Lurker player if you're on only 2 Immortals, no Storm, a couple of Zealots. It might be possible, but it's going to be very difficult. And don't forget that in this case, if you are attacking into a Swarmhouse Nydus player, you really need to kill him most of the time, because Swarmhouse Nydus is counter-attacking, is doing damage. You see Showtime's only at 58 workers. Fort Base is going down and he's rebuilding, but he will need to do a lot of damage, so I don't think he's gonna go in there. He'll probably just go back. He's too afraid. He might have been able to kill Serral here, but it's very difficult to say, honestly. There is some upgrades, there's a lot of units, there's a bunch of Lurkers, and there's only a single Observer as well, so it's probably pretty scary for Showtime to move into that. Now, meanwhile, Serral is stacking up to Hive. We'll be getting those Seismic Spines on the Lurker then, which grant +2 range for Lurkers. You see, the vision of Showtime is extremely good, by the way. Very little Nydus worms have been going up so far. And as I say that, one more pops up over here. But, I mean, Showtime really knows where the threat is coming from. His whole army is moving there already. He knows where it is, you know. He knows it can be here, he knows it can be here. There's 5 Zealots doing a little merry-go-round with the 5 of the 6, actually. Not sure what they're up to. Not even a full merry-go-round. Just a very weird pattern that they're walking, and all 6 as well. It's a little bit of a waste of supply, but at least he has good vision, and if a couple of links show up, they won't be able to clear this too easily. So Serral's really having trouble finding damage. Showtime attacking into Fleet Beacon, +3, and into Storm as well, which is really important against Swarmhost and against Lurkers. However, once those Lurkers will have Seismic Spines, I believe it's almost impossible to kill the Zerg opponent with a ground army, and you'll have to start transitioning into more air-based armies. So we see a big split up here of the army. No Prism on the map, which confuses me and surprised me a little bit, as there's not a lot of defense in the main, and it's always difficult for Zerg to deal with Prisms, obviously. I do like this little squad dealing with Nyduses and also having a lot of a big threat coming out of here, basically. If there was an Observer with this, there would be an even bigger threat, but just this army is already kind of a big threat. Could clear some creep if there was an Observer as well, and really force a bunch of Lurkers in this area and a bunch of other units. Now we see some good rotations coming out of Showtime, pretending to move into this 4th base and then going towards the 5th. We'll be able to get a cancel, well, not even a cancel, a complete kill on that 5th base, which is fantastic. And he can just move back and slowly tech into carriers. There is adaptive talents on the way. I don't believe there's... Okay, there's seismic spines already, so these lurkers are very powerful with their 10 range currently. There is an observer with this, so... Yeah, I don't think you can actually attack move into this Showtime. Yeah, Showtime agrees with me. Goes back. It should just be waiting for these extra carriers. Starts getting the air upgrades as well, and as long as his opponent is on 4 base and you're on 4 base, getting your 5th, I think as Protoss you're in a pretty happy spot, right? You're gonna be glad that this is the case. You're not gonna be too sad about this. Serral does get some map control now with this little army pushing away the leftover Archons. But once this army gets reinforced with maybe 1 or 2 Immortals, it should be a lot harder for Serral to move on the map, as with Lurkers it can be quite tricky to move on the map. They're not that fast, they die pretty quick in low numbers against Immortals for example, but if they're all together or if they're in a defensive position they can be very difficult to break. Just out in the open they're not that good. So Showtime a little bit unaware of where Serral's army is right now, positions his army in between the 4th and the 5th. Then sees the army actually moving towards the 3rd base, which this is a very interesting move. So Showtime sees basically the full army of Serral moving towards his 3rd, and his reaction is to counterattack towards the 4th base of Serral. Now, Showtime is aware that he is getting a couple of extra carriers. He has a bunch of Templar here as well, which should be able to stall quite some time. So maybe he wants to trick Serral into attacking into storms while taking out this base. Now, Serral of course is too good for that, as there's 5 lurkers at this area, and here comes the big attack by Serral, which should be able to actually snipes the 1 Templar that was here with this army, and we'll be able to get, I think, 2 carriers. Yeah, we'll be able to get 2 carriers with this big Hydra force. If he gets just 1 storm off here, that would be so big already, probably save both of these carriers. Now it's a little too late though, 2 carriers already did go down. This is a massive army, and now Showtime needs to come back with absolutely everything. He should be able to clean this up, as he has a bunch of Immortals, and this position for Lurkers isn't that hot. Also, +3 upgrades definitely do help, of course, against these only +2 Lurkers. But in general, in the open, you don't want to fight as the Zerg player. So, another counter-attack by Serral as well, or counter-attack, just another attack onto this 5th base. Both of them on relatively low worker counts. We're not really seeing either of them go up to 84, 82, up on those 5 bases. So you see no real saturation on this 5th here for Showtime. 3rd and the natural are starting to mine out though, so probably will be able to saturate it rather quickly. As he also starts pro production, so that's good by him. Gets +2 air upgrades as well as shield upgrades, and we finally see the first Vipers coming out now for Serral, which is a very good call. Against carriers you need Vipers. This push I'm not a massive fan of, honestly. I don't think you should ever be able to break this with this many ground units. I much would prefer to see a big split here. For example, 4 Archons, 3 Templar and 3 Immortals in this area, and then the rest of the army with the carriers over here. In case Serral needs to split the Lurkers. There's only 7 Lurkers on the map at the moment. You probably would be able to actually clear one of the areas and just move back at the other. Maybe lose 1 or 2 units to the Vipers, but those aren't actually ready yet. So I think a split army in this case would have been a lot better. Now, of course, those things are not easy to do. We finally do have a Prism on the map here for Showtime, who will be going into the main base. And as you can see, he always keeps the pressure on. His map vision right now isn't too great, but he gets a lot of knowledge just by attacking. So he isn't necessarily getting the knowledge by having complete map vision, but just because he is so aggressive, Serral needs to keep showing where his army is. And Showtime is extremely aware of what Serral's army is made of as well. Now, ideally, once you have this composition against Corruptor Viper, you want to get a couple of Oracles. And here we go, first Oracle finishes. I didn't even see that. We will be able to tag that army and then throw the feedbacks on the Vipers, which you really do need. Otherwise you're just gonna get picked off piece by piece. I really would love to see an army split away from this air army as well. You really need 2 different groups to be able to deal with a Hydra Lurker player. It's very difficult to get any damage done otherwise. Does manage to catch Serral a little bit off guard, and this is what I was talking about. If you don't have a revelation on this army, you're just gonna keep losing carrier after carrier, and every single time Abducts will just hit you. Showtime won't be able to clear this base. Serral on the other hand was able to clear the 6th base of Showtime and is putting significant pressure onto the 3rd and 4th area, as well as on this cybercore, which is researching +3, which is very important. We have +2 air attacks as well as armor on the way for Serral, so he is getting better upgrades, but for now Showtime is in a better spot when it comes to the air upgrades. Here comes the Oracle, won't be able to get a... Oh, actually does manage to get a revelation off. Serral not paying attention there with the abducts. Should have been able to get it. We'll be able to clear it now at least, as Showtime realizes that Oracle will be useless for the next minute and just lets it die. No observer with this army. One Lurker can be so annoying if you don't have detection. We have another little Hydra run by, trying to join up with the main force here, or perhaps opening up a second rotation for this army of Serral. Is also a possibility, of course. Now this base looks pretty much dead. It's very difficult to attack into a Lurker Corruptor Viper army if all you really have is Carrier Templar. Like you need some counter pressure in this case, and that's truly what the second part of his army was for, but then it got met by this one Lurker and pretty much got shut down. As you can see, the other bases don't have a lot of defense. There's not a lot of creep, there's not a lot of vision. This Ling is absolutely worth its weight in gold as well. Seeing absolutely everything in the middle here. Serral's vision is way better than Showtime's vision, and it makes it very difficult for Showtime to make the correct decisions in this case. He is getting a new 5th base after losing the one in the bottom right, and he still has a very powerful army. But as long as he doesn't have vision of these Vipers and Corruptors, you're just going to keep picking up unit after unit. Mothership against big Viper counts usually is kind of useless. As it just constantly just gets picked off. Mothership moves very poorly, so not that great of a unit in this case. Now we have a good run. This is a very good run by, a very good setup here by Showtime. And if he was a little quicker with the moving in, he would have been able to truly catch Serral off guard. He's still going to be able to catch Serral a little bit off guard, but Serral's micro is so good. Pure Hydra defending Storm Zealot Archon. Now, imagine if there was a single Prism here and he could warp in 9 to 10 Zealots or something like that. That would help this army so much and probably clean up those Hydras and their base. So this is really why I'd love to see a couple of extra prisms being built, but the movement that Showtime is doing right now is a lot better than he has been doing for the past minute and a half. He's really putting the pressure back on Serral, and Serral will be going back into turtle mode, realizing he was a bit too aggressive with the Lurkers, and he just needs to stay alive on those 6 bases. One of the things that I wish was a bit more of a priority for Serral now was creep spread. He only has 2 queens remaining, and they're not really busy spreading creep whatsoever. There's one active tumor here. There's maybe an active tumor here somewhere. But that's really it. So just 2 active tumors, which isn't enough to get proper creep spread. It's very difficult to figure out where your opponent is if you don't have link spread across the map and if you don't have creep spread. This should be a good fight for Showtime if you just... No, what? I think he could have continued fighting this. Not sure why he went back. Warps in 6 more Zealots. He should just be... If he takes out this army, this base becomes very, very vulnerable. Meanwhile, we see... Actually, I missed this. Let's see what happened here exactly. We see the movement. So this is really nice. He threatens this base with his air army, and then Serral's caught completely out of position, and this base is basically given up for free. Now what Serral can do here is he can try to counterattack towards this base, but he knows there's a lot of cannons there, and he knows there's a recall available. So instead Serral just cuts his losses, realizes he's gonna lose this base, which is almost empty anyway. Expands over here, and it's like, alright, that's fine. I mined enough of this base. I mined as much as I wanted. Maybe I can pick off a carrier or 2. I'm just gonna take this base and see if I can get something done with this little task force here. And Showtime is trying to match his movement, but you can see how difficult it is to match your opponent's movement if you have no vision whatsoever. Serral could be here, Serral could be here, but he's popping up over here. And Lurkers in position will force a recall from the main army, which Showtime won't be too upset that he had to do that. I mean, it was getting pretty dicey in this situation anyway. He wanted to get out of there. Oh my god. Oh, this is so annoying to play against. If you don't, whenever you don't have vision of this, with like a revelation with your oracle, you're just gonna lose a big air unit every single time, and carriers are so expensive. Now Showtime meanwhile is doing a big counterattack. This was a very good counterattack, by the way. Immediately realized when he was being attacked that he had an ability to clear a base of Serral's, and he actually is able to do that. And if he cuts off this base completely, he should also be able to get this base, which then puts Serral basically on a single mining base, which isn't really mining at the moment, and is also getting rather low because of the Vipers, who are constantly consuming that hatchery. So sadly for Showtime, these two hatcheries stay alive, but the worker count of Serral is very low. There's still a little bit of a bank, but the worker count is getting lower. The upgrades are maxing out for Showtime right now, who rebuilds the mothership. Not a massive fan of that. And what we need right now is we need basically an attack on this part of the map with the ground army. But the ground army is retreating over here. It's being pushed away by Serral's ground army. And the air army is fighting against the air army. This is exactly the scenario that Serral wants. Ideally for Protoss, you'd fight the ground army with your air army and their air army with your ground army. But right now Serral is fighting ground with ground and air with air, and that's ideal for the Zerg. So very difficult for the Protoss to do anything here, as he will be getting pushed back. This base looks... I'm not sure if it's dead or if he managed to survive maybe with a couple of storms. Ooh, actually it was a bad Lurker burrow straight into 2 cannons there. Will force a retreat out of Serral. Showtime's doing an absolutely fantastic job. He's getting better visions, getting more run-bys in as well. This base is extremely vulnerable and will remain vulnerable because it's almost impossible for Serral to defend this base and defend this base properly with Lurkers. All the rocks are open. If Showtime positions his army here, Serral will need to defend here and here. And then this base remains open, maybe a single Lurker, but Zealot run-by should be extremely good against this base. However, Showtime decides, you know what, I'm not even gonna use just Zealots, I'm gonna use my complete army, right-click that hatchery, and it's gone. Couple of links trying to go for a run-by here for Serral. Right now what Serral needs to do is he needs to create some space for himself to move on the map. And get those Corruptor Vipers to work on those carriers, but it's so difficult to create space when you don't have any creep. You don't have any units on the map that can really force your opponent to move back. We're really missing an Oracle with this army. We see 2 more on the way. Some good storms coming down. Some Observer, poor Observer. So many carriers, juicy targets, and he managed to right-click the Observer, or left-click the Observer, I guess. Big Zealot run-by will most likely either be going into this space or towards that third. Actually, the third is gone, so I guess not. Now we see Showtime just being so aggressive now. He knows he has better eco, so he can take slightly worse trades. As long as he's trading somewhat equally, he is most likely going to be fine. And this was an absolutely fantastic trade. There doesn't seem to be enough air units for Serral here, as Void Rays are being built as well. 9 more Corruptors on the way, 28 already on the field. Wow, that's actually a lot of air units. Showtime walks towards the third base, like, nothing there. Walks towards this base, nothing there. That's pretty cool. So Showtime should be aware that there's only 2 mining bases. Showtime himself only has 2 mining bases as well. 2.5 maybe. So he has slightly higher income, 400 income more. But he has more bases available to mine from. So in theory, if he just saturates the bases better, he will be getting a lot more income. Serral finally managed to create some space with his Lurker run-by. And now we see Serral on the map again. And this is very scary for the Protoss, as you're not quite sure what your opponent is doing here. We still have a big run-by set up. 4 Lurkers being produced by Serral will be functioning as a defensive squad versus Zealot run-bys. Mainly focusing on this base, leaving this base extremely open for any kind of run-by. We see another ground army making its way towards that. Well, let's call this the 4th base, this the 5th, I guess. I guess it's the 3rd base and this is the 4th. It's very weird to say 25 minutes in the game. And Showtime has such a massive army. Nice ground force as well. Will be able to truly pull Serral apart, I do believe. There's a couple of Lurkers here. Showtime is moving in. Once he sees this, he should know this is fair game. Like, he will be able to push in here and most likely clear this base. And what can Serral do? The moment he moves away from this base will die against this force. It feels like there's just too much for Showtime. He has extremely good map vision. He has so many bases on the map. His income is still pretty decent. I would love to see a couple of extra workers, but it doesn't really seem to be necessary. He's just right-clicking bases right now, and he has full vision of this army. There's a couple of Lurkers defending this squad. Serral's doing this so well, by the way. With how little he has, he's doing this extremely well. Actually chasing with the Lurkers, I'm not too sure about that. Chasing into Storm always is a bad idea, There's still a bunch of storms remaining. That's a crazy abduct here by the Viper. But yeah, it just seems like Showtime's eco is just gonna get better and better. He gets another base up. I just want to see like maybe 10 more workers here for Showtime, and this would be fantastic. Oh, Serral overestimating his army a little bit there. Won't be able to clear up these 3 Archons, Immortal, and a bunch of Zealots with the High Templar as well. There's no tag right now, no revelation on this army, so Showtime most likely will lose a carrier if he doesn't pay attention. Oh, no, he's paying attention very well. Gets a feedback off, still loses a carrier. The range of abduct feels so insane sometimes, especially when you're playing against someone like Serral or Rainer. Like, these guys always seem to get the abducts off that they need. Oh, a couple of Corruptors still on the map, 2 more carriers being built, but only 36 workers. This base is getting mined out. This base should be getting mined out soon as well, so Showtime just really needs to wait. But you could say, hey, why isn't Showtime just going back? I mean, he has more bases than his opponent, but actually by putting pressure on his opponent, he's making sure that Serral can't really expand to this base, he can't expand to this base. The moment he gives Serral the map back, it's like, hey, you know what, you can be the guy in charge again, you can attack me, Serral will be able to take those extra bases and maybe get away back into the economical game. Right now, the only way for Serral to win is to get an absolutely fantastic fight and then counterattack and kill Showtime. And Showtime has 2 win conditions. He can either get a fantastic fight, or he can just kind of starve out his opponent. And he seems to be starving out and be very, very patient for the absolutely best fight possible. There's no more Oracles with this army, but you just have this run-by squad, which consists of 5 Archons. The good old 5 Archon run-by is doing massive work here. A lot of workers going down once again. 1 carrier, 2 carriers did fall here, but you can just reproduce them, there's no real issue. You see Showtime completely out-mining Serral at this point as well. And yeah, I just don't think it's gonna be enough for our boy Serral. Wonderboy is down to 27 workers at this point. And Showtime's movement is just simply too good. As long as this base doesn't get up and this base doesn't get up, there's really no way for Showtime to lose, unless he loses 5 or 6 carriers at once. But this army of Serral can't really jump on top of this as long as there's this many Void Rays, there's this many Storms, some Immortals with it as well. Very difficult to jump on top of that army. Showtime should be careful that this base doesn't get up though. Good Templar control. Yeah, does manage to find it. There's no Templar or no Observer. Oh, actually there's an Observer with this army, so should be able to maybe fight with this. Yeah, maybe a bit too much for this tiny army. But once again, a good rotation coming out of Showtime here. We'll be putting pressure on those 2 still remaining bases. Once you get a tag off on this army, he should be able to just move into here or move into here, wherever Serral's army isn't. Some decent storms coming out right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see a big tag on top of this army. Yeah. Is there still any Vipers remaining? There's still 4 Vipers. They were getting energy from the main base. Actually, all of Serral's structures are running rather low. These Lurkers should be able to die. I think Showtime should be able to catch those, at least. Good storms, and this is looking very, very poor for Serral right now. He still has some Vipers remaining, but almost no Lurkers on this side. Still a bunch of Lurkers here. Moving forward with the Corruptors right now, we'll be targeting down a lot of the carriers, but these Archons, once they finish, should be able to just right-click on top of this Corruptor ball. In combination with the Void Ray should be enough. GG gets called and Showtime wins the game. So, very impressive game there by Showtime. Actually winning a late game against Serral, who was lacking a little bit of a creep threat and map presence. But yeah, absolutely fantastic game. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions. And be sure to like the video, as that helps me in some way that I'm not quite aware of yet. But everyone else always says it. So thank you very much, and see you boys next time. Bye bye.